book has not been updated in over 6 years. Chief Ritz has dedicated himself to make sure that that gets done in his first year of service. This spring, we teamed up with Cicero. Many years ago, we passed an intergovernmental agreement with Cicero to share drug proceeds with combinations. That kind of fell by the wayside. We rejuvenated that. We've teamed up with Cicero, and approximately 1 month ago, we had a force of 90 law enforcement officers between Berwyn's Police Department TACT units, Cicero's Police Department TACT units, DEA, U.S. Marshals, county offices, HIDA, state offices. We had over 90 officers that went out and executed search warrants and made their presence felt within the Cicero and Berwyn communities. President Dominic and I decided that the borders to our towns do not stop at Lombard. We share a common problem. It makes sense for us to share common assets, resources to eradicate the problem. And we've established that. Just recently, we had our second conference of officers that went out and did the same thing, which just happened about a week ago, stemming from the Cicero Police Department. We had the same contingent of officers go out and do the same thing. We're showing our presence on the street where our officers need to be. We've had shared resources and intelligence, which has just opened up within the last year with the federal government, with DEA, with the U.S. Marshals, with the surrounding communities. Several of the communities come to our police department and our TACT unit to get information regarding gangs, guns, and drugs, because that's how much this unit and these officers have transformed this police department in a short span of 1 year's time. Commander O'Halloran, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
Speaking in terms of the reorganized TAC unit, it's quite an accomplishment what these officers have done in such a short time. But we have become, I guess it's a good thing in our circles, is that we have become recognized as experts in the field of gang enforcement and drug enforcement because we're so proactive and we're so active in it, and unfortunately it's in our community. But that's the good side of it. And the other good side of it for us as a community is that we're still going to continue to work in that direction, and we're still going to use all of the resources that we have and continue to search for more resources to continue to eradicate the problem from our community, because with the scourge of gangs and drugs that keeps coming through, the longer it stays here, the harder it is for all of us to do all of our jobs in all city government agencies. So it's a plus, but you know, there does come with a little bit of a downside of it, because unfortunately it is in our community, but we're going to continue to keep working to eliminate it.
And I've got those numbers since August 1st of 2009 compared to the similar period. Calls are down by 2,725, and incidents are down by 872, because they're out there on the street suppressing the crime before it occurs. The gangbangers, thank you. The gangbangers out there, they're undercover, but the gangbangers out there know who they are, and they leave. And that's what we want. And the applause goes to our police department and the men and women over there that have taken it upon themselves to carry out my wishes in eradicating this problem. I've also asked Commander O'Halloran to be here tonight because about 1.5 years ago, we all heard that we had problems with our drug forfeiture funds, that the government was coming back and re-auditing us, and that there was a lot of money we had to pay. From the first set, we've repaid most of that money. I'm going to turn it over to Tom in a minute. But we've also had some good news recently. So with that, Commander O'Halloran?
Yes, Mayor. Last year, back in January of '09, we were notified by the United States Department of Justice criminal division of the asset forfeiture and money laundering section that we were due for another audit. We went through an audit back in 2005 as well, which we are still in the final phase of completing what's called the offset process for that. So the second audit was conducted. The process started back in January of '09 through the Office of the Inspector General Chicago Field Office. And it took about a 4-month process where they basically come in and I spent in excess of a month's time on a full 8-hour-a-day basis working with the auditors, tracking all of our cases, tracking all of the paperwork, tracking all of our expenditures. It required a great deal of commitment from the city's finance department as well, going back and forth, making sure that we had all of our ducks in a row, so to speak. And the end result is that we were notified this January with the initial findings from the Chicago Field Office that they initially had assessed us a fine or a finding of over $1 million in what they related as or called impermissible expenses. The biggest portion of that was just a little over $900,000 that we had spent since the year 2000 in purchasing squad cars, which created it took a great burden off of the police department's city budget. We were able to use that money through the asset forfeiture program. Going back to the year 2000, we've been doing this. The Chicago Field Office comes in and says, no, that's what they deem to be an impermissible expense. There was an appeal process. We worked on that for about 3 or 4 months, and we just received word 2 weeks ago that the appeal went all the way back up to Washington, and the United States Department of Justice in Washington office agreed with us that, yes, squad cars are a regular requirement for the use of police officers. So that little bit over $1 million is now whittled down to about $110,000, and we still have some time left to try and remediate that. We're in the process of getting that knocked down, so that again is a great relief for us, because it does again take a strain off of the city's budget and allows us to use those other resources in our efforts to fight crime. So it's been a long process, but I think there's a lot of good news ahead.
And that success can be pointed directly at this gentleman sitting to my right, because he's the one that spent the time and the hours to argue with the government and go through all the processes. So, Commander, I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Another promise that I made the last time I was here was to address the budget. Let me state by prefacing that without the hard work of our finance director, John Wysocki, and his entire finance department, without the hard work of our budget chairman, Nona Chapman, and her entire budget committee, and without the hard work of the entire city council, definitely I cannot leave out the hard work of the entire city, all the employees and staffs, supervisors, department heads, in cutting and correcting and doing what needed to be done. We were able to keep our heads above water in 2009. Now let me tell you this, that revenues in 2009 were approximately $2.5 million less than what was budgeted for fiscal year 2009. In addition, additional revenues such as motor fuel taxes was down approximately $330,000 from what was budgeted for fiscal year 2009. That's $2.8 million that affected our bottom line in our general fund budget. But through the refinancing of our long-term debt, through the cuts that we made when we first got in office, in the administrative cuts, and through the cuts that each department did in their expense spending every day, we finished 2009 with a surplus in our general budget of $375,825. My compliments goes to our city. My compliments goes to our city staff, our employees, our department heads, and our aldermen for making sure that they watched every dollar that went through that door. Especially my thanks go through our watchful eye of John Weiss.